So the European Indoor Championships capped off this past weekend, and I had previewed two specific events that I thought, were going to produce some really high quality results. The women's 400, where we saw Lieke Klaver take the win in 50.38 seconds. Check out the video that I did kind of breaking down her performance there. But then also the women's 60-meter dash, where we essentially had a four-way race. But Zeynep Dosso from Italy, she came away with the win running 7.01 seconds, which was a personal best for her, proves her consistency that she's been showing over the past couple years. More specifically, what I really did like is the fact that throughout all the rounds, she actually was very consistent, having run 7.06, 7.03, and then finally 7.01 to get the win, all in the same day, in the span of 2 hours or something like that. Heats, semis, and finals. Dosso finished just ahead of Mujinga Kumbunji, who had a very strong start. She finished second in 7.02, Van der Wieken 7.06, and then Iwa Swoboda 7.07. Now, in my preview, I had spoken about how these four women were probably the favorites. I did say Dosso, then Kumbunji. I thought that Swoboda would be able to take bronze, but Van der Wieken was able to come out with the third place spot. Now, the interesting question that I have is, what does this mean kind of going forward? These 60-meter performances, we might look at them either in a vacuum in terms of just the European Championships, or more importantly, how is this going to, play out when we get to the World Championships at the end of the year in Tokyo, Japan? Now, even before then, in about 2 weeks, we do have the World Indoor Championships, where you're going to see the same women competing, going for a gold medal. Last time in 2024, we saw Iwa Swoboda, she took the silver. Zeynep Dosso, she took the bronze medal. Kumbunji did not compete in the indoor season last year. Van der Wieken, she did run in the final, and she got, I think, 6th or 7th place last year in Glasgow, all of them finishing behind Julian Alfred, who of course got the gold medal. But after that, depending on who wins, whatever it may be, what are we looking forward to in this 100-meter dash outdoors? One of the big things to take away from here is that, of course, most of the top athletes who are likely to see in the 100-meter dash on the women's side, they of course did not compete indoors, primarily in the 60-meter dash. You did see Julian Alfred, she ran a 300, she ran a 400, but she didn't focus on the 60. Her goal is to, of course, get a world championship title outdoors. You also have Saha'carri Richardson, Melissa Jefferson. Under Dennis Mitchell, they never compete indoors, so they didn't compete. You do have Tia Clayton, who did compete indoors at the Astana meet early in the season, and she is, it seems, planning to go to the World Indoor Championships as well. So we'll see, kind of how she stacks up against these women in the 60-meter dash. All these women have run faster than Tia, but Tia is a very, very competitive athlete. And then you have athletes like a Dina Asher-Smith, a Daryl Nita. They didn't compete indoors. Dina did run the 300 and the 400, but, not in the 60 meters, not focusing on indoors. Daryl Nita, she did not compete indoors. She, moved to Florida and is now training under Lance Brahman. So changes in terms of her training environment. The focus is, of course, going to be outdoors as well. And then along with someone like Marie-Josée Talou, who also doesn't run indoors or hasn't run indoors in many years, that kind of, completes the Olympic 100-meter final in Paris last year that we saw, where all those women, for the most part, are not running the indoor season, except Tia Clayton and Mujinga Kumbunji. Kumbunji, she, of course, did finish in 6th place in Paris. So when I start to kind of break things out from the European Indoor 60-meter dash final, looking towards the outdoor season, I'm not sure how much of an impact this specific race and this season is going to have when we get to Tokyo later in the year. Now, things very likely could change as we get through the outdoor season, as things start to progress month over month. But when looking at the names here, it's just a little tough to see how they're going to stack up against some of the women who just didn't compete during the indoor season. For context, look at the last Olympic Games. Like I just ran through all the women. The only one of these four athletes, from Zeynep Dosso, Mujinga Kumbunji, Patricia Van der Wieken, as well as Iwa Swoboda, only Mujinga Kumbunji was actually competing in the Paris Olympic Games final. You had Zeynep Dosso, you had Iwa Swoboda, and Van der Wieken. They all made the semifinals in Paris, but weren't able to progress through the final. Now, taking it back a year prior in 2023, you actually did see Iwa Swoboda make the 100-meter final at the Budapest World Championships. She finished 6th place there, but in the semifinals, she actually only qualified on time. Both Swoboda as well as Dina Asher-Smith, they were the last qualifiers on time, running 11.01 seconds. But again, she made the final and she did finish 6th place. Prior to that, you had Dina Asher-Smith and Mujinga Kumbunji. 2022, they finished in 4th and 5th place respectively at those World Championships. 1 year before that, at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, you saw Asia Del Ponte. She finished 5th place, also from Switzerland. Mujinga Kumbunji, she finished 6th place. And then Daryl Nita, she finished 8th place. And then lastly, just going back to 2019, where Dina Asher-Smith, she got the silver medal in the 100-meter dash behind Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce in Doha. So The thing that I'm kind of taking away from here as it relates to the 60-meter dash that we just saw at the European Indoor Championships is that Mujinga Kambundji is probably the most consistent athlete in that entire field out of the top 4 women that we just saw at Euros. Yes, you do have Daryl Nita. Yes, you do have Dean Asher-Smith. They didn't compete here in the 60. They're extremely consistent, but when it comes to Zainab Doso, Mujinga Kambundji, Patricia van der Weeken, as well as Iwa Swoboda, Kambundji seems to be the most consistent and the most capable of really mixing it up with some of the other women who are not competing indoors. Now, that is not to dismiss any of these other women where Zainab Doso as well as Patricia van der Weeken, they're both very young, I think 25 years old, so they still have a few years to be able to grow, develop, get faster. But when you're comparing them to others like a Saha'carri Richardson, a Julian Alfred, Melissa Jefferson, who are also extremely young, either younger or in that same age range, then it gets a little bit tougher to see how they're going to be able to mix things up. And then again, you introduce Tia Clayton, who is significantly younger. She's only 20 years old still. She'll be turning 21 in, I think, August this year. So when you're talking about the rest of the women, I didn't even mention someone like Sharika Jackson, who's going to be coming back from injury. All these women are, again, significantly faster than some of these European women, and they are in the same age range or a little bit younger. That's to say nothing of someone like Iwa Swoboda, who also is maybe in the conversation, but again, she made the final in Budapest 2023, hasn't been able to make any other finals when talking about Worlds or Olympic Games, and she only broke the 11-second barrier, I think, just 2 years ago in 2023. Some of these other women, you do have Kambundji, she's been able to break 11 seconds multiple times. Doso as well as van der Weeken, they are still on the cusp of breaking the 11-second barrier. And we know, considering the landscape of the women's 100-meter dash right now, it's going to take not only 10-9 something to be able to make a final, but also 10-8 or even better to even just get on the podium. Again, you're talking about Saha'carri Richardson, you're talking about Julian Alfred, you're talking about Sharika Jackson. All of them have run 10-7s. Then you add in a few other women who are on the cusp of running 10-7s, very consistent in the 10-8 range. That is what it's going to take to get on that podium. And a lot of these women who competed at the European Indoor Championships in the 60, they still have a lot to go to be able to get into that realm. Again, I do think that Mujinga Kambundji is the most consistent and the most capable of mixing it up with some of these other women, considering she's actually made multiple, 100-meter finals, either at Worlds or Olympic Games. But even then, she's going to have to take a step up. She hasn't been able to get on the podium in the 100-meter dash. She does have 200-meter bronze from 2019 in Doha, but the 100 meters is a very different story. But despite all that, I do want to be clear. I am very, very impressed with the performances of all 4 of these women at the European Indoor Championships. Again, Zainab Doso, she has been rising. She got the bronze medal at World Indoors last year. She has really been, dealing with injuries in previous years, and now she's finally finding her footing, getting the European Indoor Gold in 7.01, running 7.0 in 3 consecutive rounds. Very, very impressive. Kambundji, who has been one of the more consistent athletes, of course, not only in Europe, but like I said, globally in the 100 and 200. For her to get a silver medal here, another amazing performance, considering she was actually the gold medalist at the previous European Indoor Championships in 2023. Patricia van der Weeken, another athlete who is on the rise, also going to be a very, consistent name when talking about European athletics, and then one day might be able to dip into, the larger conversation internationally in the 100 meters. And then, of course, Iwa Swoboda, who has always been a mainstay when talking about the 60-meter dash, finally finding her footing in the 100, having broken 11 seconds, a couple times at this point over the past 2 years. Maybe she's going to be able to step things up and really start to compete globally. But just wanted to give a quick highlight of the women's 60-meter dash from the European Indoor Championships. I know this meet didn't get a lot of spotlight, even from myself to a degree. I spoke about how many, major athletes aren't competing at European Indoors for various different reasons. But let me know what you thought about the women's 60-meter dash or any other performances at the European Indoor Championships. And do you think that in the 60 specifically, any of these performances that we saw from these top women are going to translate to make them competitive in the 100-meter dash when we get to Tokyo outdoors at the end of the year? Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Always appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.